Hi, this is Kevin Pawlowski from Paradise Found Studio, and today we're going to be talking to Natalie Plasencia. And she's got a wide variety of types of work she does, including painting, sculpture, bronze, dance. So we're going to get into that, so I'm really excited to talk to her. Natalie, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Kevin. It's an honor.
Looking at your website, on your bio, you talked about, if you will, your vocation as an artist is focused on the oppressed. And I was wanting to know what you mean by that.
I find that it does come out in my artwork. It's almost like if I don't have someone to fight for, the work's just not the same. Like I feel like it needs to be ignited by this passion to help and to serve.
I've seen you worked a lot in a lot of different media, like paint, clay, bronze, even costume design and dance. Do these different types of art influence each other, or do they work together in some way?
I find that it's all problem solving, and you want to get a certain effect. You need to figure out what medium is the best. But then there's also a comfort level that you find in certain mediums. For example, painting is almost like exercises for me. I see it as an exercise, like a sketch. But sculpture, I find, is the one that I just feel comfortable in it. I find the weight, the texture, it's so real to me. It's like I don't get stuck in painting and in sketches. I'm constantly trying to create depth, the illusion of depth. And in sculpture, I feel like it's done, it's there.
Your Blessed Trinity cross. This is one you did in 2013, it looks like, about a 5-foot tall cross, large piece. I was curious, with the rough texture of the wood and the polished bronze, you've got a lot of symbolism that you're trying to work into that. I was wondering if you could talk us through that a little bit.
That piece, I would have to say, is probably a turning point, not only in my artwork, but in my own personal life, where I felt that God was clearly speaking to me. I started researching, how do I represent 3 people in one God? It's still a mystery. It's always going to be a mystery. And so I find that research fuels a lot of my work. I was actually pregnant with my last baby while finishing that piece. A good friend of mine, who right now is my spiritual advisor, Father Giuseppe, and he's a good friend of ours. So I told him, I said, hey, I'm working on this piece. I want you to come. I want you to come. I've been talking to you about this, but I want you to see it. And so I showed him the cross, the wooden part, and I said, well, this is Christ. And he was like, well, of course, this is the weather-worn existence here on earth. This is Christ. It makes sense. I searched for a piece of driftwood over in our nautical consignments here, and there's driftwood all over the place here, but I needed to find a specific driftwood. And when I found that piece, I was like, this is perfect. This is perfect. I brought it home, cleaned it out. We made a mold of it, and it's poured in bronze.
Oh, so this isn't wood here, that's bronze that's cast from a mold from the wood. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, the Holy Spirit was like the element that held everything together. When I brought this friend of mine over to the bronze foundry, Father Giuseppe, and he the joy he found in it, he was like, the strength of these rays shooting out, like he said, like life will never be the same. It just stayed in my head. I didn't understand it. How? Like I was so humbled by that moment where that piece just left me speechless several times, where I truly truly understood that this is the work of God. The centerpiece was, again, one of these pieces where I thought, okay, you know what? Perfect circle, no beginning, no end, unconditional, the alpha, the omega, perfectly polished. At that point, I was about 6 months pregnant, 7 months pregnant. The guys at the shop were like, look, you can't work on this anymore. I'm like, it's not polished enough. They would go back, grind, polish, grind, polish. Took a picture, and what I saw was my own reflection in there. And it's not that it's my own reflection, it's that God was inviting me to take part in his divinity. And being pregnant, I mean, God must have been like, Nat, this is for real. I love to share that because we're all called to that. Dealing with divine images is no joke. I take it with a grave responsibility. And that's where I think my spiritual advisor always has come in. I found that my art, my work leads me to a deeper understanding and definitely a very profound.
So the face of Christ. So this
Uh-huh.
is a 6 foot tall, close crop image of Christ's face with these piercing blue eyes, large eyes. I was just wondering. I mean, very impactful, of course. You walk up there,
Yeah.
and there's no looking away from those eyes for sure.
No.
I was wondering, what you were trying to get across with this.
So I did that 18 or 19 years of age. I had actually made that for, at that time, my spiritual advisor was Padre Florentino Ascoitia, and he was the director of the family encounter movement that I had worked on ever since I was 11 up until my mid 20s. That the intensity I found in the retreats, I put it in the youth retreats. I was able to experience Christ as a friend, a friend that I grew to know through scriptures. I think that painting just kind of holds that moment for me personally. And I know other people have told me about the piercing eyes and the piercing eyes. And I think that teenagers need to see that. They want people to be genuine. They want people to look at them in the eye. They want real. And Christ always gives us that. We just have to look.
Going to your 2004 piece, Passion of Christ. This one is of course, 12 years later, much darker, going from more of a realistic style to what, I describe it as like a more expressionistic. Can you explain more about what you were thinking in this painting? Was this a dark time? Did this reflect in your own life, or were you just delving into the Passion of Christ when you were doing this?
I was transitioning, coming back from having studied expressive arts therapies, but also thank the Lord for my spiritual advisors, which at that time in my life was Padre Llorente, and also a Jesuit, and I started doing more of the silent retreats. And the silent retreats take you through the passion of the Christ. He gave his life. He explained how we should live. It's a moment where I can dedicate time, like a prayer, meditating on those moments as a human being, how we can endure a lot more than we think we can.
So moving on to a large painting you've done in gouache, Nuestro Señora de la Caridad de Cobre. Is that close?
Yeah. Nuestra.
I studied a little Spanish, but
Good.
but this is another large painting you did in 2018. So this is the Patroness of Cuba. She reminds me a lot of course, Our Lady of Guadalupe out in Mexico. But I'm not familiar with the Patroness of Cuba.
Caridad del Cobre, which is what she's known as, was very special to the Cuban people. Regardless of years and years of atheism imposed, forced by the Cuban communist government onto its people. And so I found that she She does represent hope for the Cuban people. She always has. It is Our Lady of Charity, and charity is giving. And so I was trying to figure out, well, what is it that she's giving? You know, what is it that she's giving? And I found that if you look at the painting, there is a great deal of turmoil in the sunset. There is a storm. She appeared to 3 fishermen who were out at sea, and there was a great storm that was coming. And that's always Mary's. She comes at moments, you know, where we need her. They're known as the Tres Juanes, the 3 Juans. Like, who are these people? Like, they lived. And as I painted them, I started understanding there are 3 moments in our faith. There's despair, where we can't seem to understand what is going on. There's the boy who learned and he knew what to do. He starts praying. He made the childlike decision to obey his mom, to understand this is a moment of prayer. The other one who's looking down and rowing, that's despair. And the man who is towards the front, the bow, he's looking up. So he's made the connection, but he's still doubting. I think that's what happens as adults. 3 moments in faith that in prayer, in communication, in praying the rosary, we're able to go through the sorrowful, the joyful, and come out of the storm, knowing all along that Mary was protecting us.
So going into a very different piece, a Tapestry of Hope. This is more of a performance piece, and which I guess you designed, you directed the performance.
I found a great deal of inspiration from Las Damas de Blanco, the ladies in white. It is a group of women, mothers, wives, daughters of political prisoners in Cuba. Every Sunday at 11 o'clock, they go to Mass. And in that act of going to Mass, they are attacked by the Cuban government because they stand nonviolently in protest of political prisoners. So women have a power in nonviolence, in our needlework, as quiet, repetitive, mundane as it might seem, in ironing, in cooking. There's so many, rocking the babies to sleep. There's so many acts that we as women do that are small, minute, and yet accumulate a large powerhouse. And I felt that I wanted to represent this meditative motion.
Well, Natalie, thanks for your time today. I appreciate you taking us through all this great work.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more of Natalie's work, her website is down below if you're in YouTube, and also my own website, Paradise Found Studio. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like, and even better, subscribe so you get the regular feed. We do this every 2 weeks. We're going to be talking to more artists, more tours, so it's going to be real fun to watch, so please join us.